Well, hello everyone and welcome back to Vickie's Country Home. Today I'm just going to do some updates and let you see what I'm doing around my homestead. It's springtime. We have a very short growing season, so when our weather breaks, that means you get out and you work really hard, really fast to get it all done so that you have time to harvest everything. So I've been doing a lot of garden planting in my garden, clearing it. We're cutting down the weeds all around us because if you've followed me for any length of time, you know we have a huge fire danger. So that is like super important to go get the weeds cut down for a huge distance. But we've also been having a whole lot of rain and thunderstorms, and it's made it really challenging because trying to plant in between thunderstorms and for the ground to dry up enough for us to go out and cut down the weeds has been just something else this year. But we're getting it done. So I'm going to give you kind of my garden update. Let me bring you along. Okay, this is my main garden area, and I've spent a lot of time out here. And a lot of it was getting the weeds out. Plus, if you saw my garden last year, I had cinder blocks going around all these beds. And I thought they would work well to give me a little bit of a raised bed because our soil here has to have so much amendment. What I found is things really didn't grow in them, and they took up a lot of space. So Shayna got out here and removed all of those cinder blocks. Bless her heart, she was out here breaking her back getting those out for me. So now we've taken those out and we're adding some soil right around the edges where the cinder blocks were. And it's going to give me a lot more planting space, and it's going to be just more usable overall. So that's the start. And then I've been out here starting on pruning these raspberry and blackberry vines because last year they grew, but they didn't really produce a lot. So I'm hoping that these are the second year vines. And I'm going to just kind of wait and give them some space and see what happens. And then over there, those are all new that have sprung up against the fence. So I'm going to let those grow so I'll have more raspberries. I believe they're all raspberries. And then those down there are my strawberries, and they are really starting to make, and I've got to build probably a chicken wire cage I'm going to build to go over it, because what I found is as soon as they start turning red, the birds come, and I end up not getting much at all. So that's a project that in the next week or so, hopefully I'll get done. And then over there next to those raspberry and blackberry vines, I've got some big grow bags, and I've used these for a few years. I love them. They're so convenient, and they give me some vertical space to grow in, whereas I don't need a lot of the planting bed space. So over there in those, I've got sugar snap peas, and that's a different grow bed. And I'm going to see how this works. I've got some onions that came back from last year. I've planted some more onions. And around the back, on the left side, I've planted some green beans. And these grow bags here, these are all green beans, because last year I just didn't have as many as I'd like. So we put in a bunch. And I have bought so many green bean plants. I've bought the seeds, and I've never really had success with any of those. So I went back to what my grandma and my mama taught me, and that is buy a bag of pinto beans and plant them. You can't get less expensive, and I got more beans last year from those pinto beans out of my kitchen than I ever did with any of the ones that I purchased. So I'm looking forward to those coming up. And I've pre-sprouted, I soaked the beans, so hopefully they will come up quickly. But if you're looking for green beans that do really well for not much money, go with the pinto beans. And then at the end of the season, just let some ripen and you'll have pinto beans or you'll have seeds for next year. Over here is my middle bed, and this one, it's kind of got a number of things going on, but mostly I've got some tomatoes planted right through the center. And I'm not done. I need to find some more Roma tomato plants. Probably go into town tomorrow and look for those. But I have a San Marzano's, the big one right there in the middle, so I'm happy about that. And I've got Early Girl, and I've got some Sun Gold. So, and that one Roma down here on the end. So we'll see how those do. And I have some garlic that came up from last year and some chives, and I think they're garlic chives. So those are all doing well. And over there in the straw, I bought it was one 4-inch pot that had leeks in it, and it was just a whole bunch together. So never planted leeks before, so I separated them out and in bunches of a few and planted those over there. So we'll see how those do. And this is my crazy oregano that just takes over, and I have pulled so much of it out of this bed. And in fact, there's all around these chives here, and I'm still pulling the stuff out. But I'm going to repurpose that. I have some in pots, but I'm also going to reuse it to try and stabilize a bank that the dirt is eroding from. So I'll show you that, and we're going to see how that works, because it obviously loves it here. So I'm going to see if I can use it to my advantage. And then I've got peppers, and that one is an Anaheim chili right down here. Then I've got 3 jalapenos and some basil down on the end. More tomatoes. And on the other side I have Fresno chilies. And so those look like they're all doing well and they're blooming. And I'm hoping to get a really good crop of peppers this year. And here's those raspberry and blackberry vines, and more cinder blocks that we're going to use for our project. And back there, that whole bed is potatoes. And I have gold potatoes and white potatoes growing in there, and they look like they're doing well. And then I've got, here on the end is some rosemary that I planted last year. It survived, yay! They don't always survive here, so hopefully that one's going to keep going and do well, because I love rosemary. And right there is my patch of asparagus, and I planted 2 rows years ago, and they're really just getting going. In fact, I need to come out and harvest some. And they're doing well, but there's this big space in the middle that they haven't spread into yet. So I planted some broccoli, and we'll see how it does, and if it doesn't, that's okay. It was just some seeds. And these are Swiss chard that were there from last year, and they came back. So I'm letting them go, and I'm going to harvest some, in the next day or so, and make sure they're not bitter. I haven't tried them, but they're doing really well, and hopefully they're good and I can harvest those and get started on veggies out of my garden. And then this whole area is got a whole lot of little green things, but mostly these first two lines that maybe you can see them. But I've got 2 lines of chard planted because we love it, with a little more interplanted here. And then next to it I have spinach planted, and there's 2 rows of that. And then there's 2 rows of kale. And I'm going to need to thin this. They were older seeds, so they were a year old, I think. So I planted heavy just to make sure that I got some. And they've come up really well, so I'm going to have to thin. But all in the center, there's a lot of little green things coming up. And I think those are parsley, because I had parsley go to seed there. So I'm going to wait a little bit before I just totally scrape those away. But if there's some parsley, I'll probably transplant it. So that is my main garden area. And it's doing really well, but that area over there has not been planted yet. I'm going to get a lot more tomatoes, and I'll probably put some carrots and baby bok choy and some things like that over there. We're going to see how much room after I get my tomatoes. Alright, this is right outside my garden. I planted some comfrey, and I planted this last year and I wasn't even sure it would come back, but I'm so thankful it did. It's such a useful herb to have, and I can't wait till it gets larger. We still need to clean the weeds out from around that. Shayna has been out here yesterday all day mowing these weeds down with DR trimmer that we have. It's the only thing we can use because of all the rocks. Anything else that you use out here will create sparks because it's metal. So that's the only thing we can use that doesn't really increase our fire danger. So right here, she can't get right up against the plant even though it's surrounded by chicken wire. So she's at least got it cleared where I can come out and pull those little bit of weeds. And this is it's another container garden that I put together, and we did this on top of pallets that are sitting on cinder blocks, and then we have chicken wire around it, which raises it to a better level, but it also helps keep the rabbits out so that they don't eat everything. And this kind of has a few things, but mostly I have some red romaine that reseeded from last year. So I've got that in several pots, and it's doing really well. But then I also had these other pots empty. So last year I planted okra because I absolutely love it, and it was never producing anything when I planted it in the ground. Last year someone at the nursery told me to try doing it in pots for our climate, and it worked. So this year I've planted a lot of okra seed that I pre-soaked. So I'm going to be watching and hoping those come up quickly. So I've got okra in quite a few of these pots here, all the way down to the end. So 4 or 5 of these big brown pots, plus the 2 white ones down there. Plus I've got some that are mixed in with these other in the open spaces. And then I have some of that crazy oregano that just loves my house and my property, so I put some in that pot last year. So this is all doing well, and I'm really excited to see how the okra does this year. And this is my back garden, and this used to be the run from a chicken coop we had just right there on the other end. And we tore that one down and built that one over there. So we already had this fencing up, which keeps the critters out. Plus I had really well fertilized soil. So, aha, this would be a great garden. So I used this for the first time last year, and it did really well. So I'm gonna just keep using it. I love it, and I'd like to expand it out, by another 6 to 8 feet. We'll see. But this year I started out, I've got watermelon planted here in the corner, and those plants are yellow watermelons, which I've never tried before, but I threw some little red watermelon seeds from last year in there too. And next to it I've got pickling cucumbers, and I added a few seeds for that also. And then the rest of that side right there against the fence, that's all yellow squash, because I love the stuff, and I really like a lot of that. And across the back will be zucchini. And over in the corner, it's a Frankie seed that I had, and it looks kind of like a weird zucchini, but it also might be a winter squash, so I'm not sure. So I just planted a few seeds there to try it. And all along there, up to that big rock, those are butternut squash. So we love those, and hopefully I'm going to get a few of those. And in this corner back here, these are all cantaloupe, and I've just planted a lot of seeds because last year I found out seeds did better than buying the little nursery plants. So I'm hoping that that is the same this year. And going down the center, first of all, down here at the base of this pole, this is where I had tomatillos last year. And it looks like they've reseeded, so I'm letting those little green right there, I believe those are tomatillo, and I'm just going to let them grow, and hopefully that's what that is. And here in the center, these are hops that we planted because Brian makes his own beer and he wants to try growing these. So we've got these started, and that's 2 plants. And then I put up just some twine, some garden twine, up from this pole to give them something to grow on. So we'll see how that does. And down here was another tomatillo plant last year, and I'm not sure if any are coming up, but I'm waiting to see. And these are my grapevines, and they are really budding out early this year. I haven't seen the grape buds come out yet, but normally we don't see the leaves come out for another several weeks, and these are all doing well. The one down there was really slow last year, but it does have leaves coming out, so we'll keep an eye on that. But I came out yesterday and pruned them back because there were just so many canes coming up that it just was too much. And I don't really have it coming off a trunk except at the bottom. So we'll see, but I did get grapes last year, and we'll see how they do this year. And those 4 right there, those are black manukas, and they're a really sweet, dark purple table grape, and they're seedless. And to me, they're the best red seedless or purple seedless you can get. And then these right here, one of these is a Chardonnay and one is a Cabernet. And I bought them last year, and they're growing well. I'm not going to do a whole lot of pruning yet. I want them to really get established. And we're going to put up the same kind of trellis system we have over there. So, and that's just, it's 4x4 pressure treated post, but it's in a, it's like a stake, a metal stake at the bottom. And it seems to be working well. The only thing is we have these on here to tighten them, and it doesn't seem to be enough. So Brian is going to get some turnbuckles and put in the center, and hopefully that's going to make those wires a lot tighter. So those are my grapevines, and over here, this is a dwarf peach tree, and I planted it, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. This year, last year it took off, and it just, you can see how full it got. And it's only about, 6-7 feet tall. It's really a short little tree. It produced quite a few really, really tasty peaches last year. And I don't know that I'm going to get as many this year, but I do have a lot of little baby peaches in here. I don't know if you'll be able to see. There's some there. There's some over here. So I've got a number of them in there. We'll just have to see how they do. But I'm so happy this tree did well, and it has wonderful peaches. And these are my little shiny noise-makers that I use to help keep the birds out, and they really did pretty well last year. All it is, let's see if I can show you, my used canning lids, and I poked a hole in them and strung them up with some fishing line. And some of them in the wind, the fishing line would break off. I'm going to have to restring some. I may try putting something around the center to keep it from being so sharp. But overall, I'm very happy with them. They worked well, they make noise, they shine in the sunlight, so it's a very good use of old canning lids. And this right here is a gorgeous lilac bush, but unfortunately I need to move it because we're worried that if there were a fire it might be a ladder to get the fire up on the roof. So if anybody's had any luck with transplanting lilacs, let me know in the comments. And this is going across the front of my porch. I have these planters, and every year, normally I would plant some geraniums and some lobelia and just really pretty colors. And this year I thought, you know what? I always plant my herb garden out with my vegetables, and that's kind of a trek when I just need to grab some herbs. So this year I decided to plant some right here up by my front porch. And there I have marjoram, and then I have my junkyard critters. I love these things. My aunt playing a saxophone. This was one of my first. It's a dog that's hiking its leg. I just love that one. And here's basil. And in each of these pots, along with the herbs, I also planted nasturtium leaves because they're beautiful, they're colorful, and you can eat the leaves and the flowers. They're nice, peppery tasting. Down here, this big pot on the bottom, that is more of that oregano that I'm going to transplant, and I'll show you where in a minute. And I have some more rosemary and some lavenders. So those I'll be planting in the next few days. And this pot has rosemary, and it's a small one, but I think usually the small ones grow better for me. And right there is, here's some more of my junkyard critters. Another dog. Talon's my big fat dog that bobs his head and tail in the wind, which we have all the time. And that one is Brian's. It's rocks and metal, and it's a T-Rex. I bought it as a gift and had to hide it in plain sight at a neighbor's house after he fell in love with it. Because where do you hide something like that? Another junkyard critter, that is my putty tat. And over here I have thyme. And again, all of them have nasturtium planted in there too. So I hope that does well. I love all of those. And you'll be able to smell the herbs when you walk by. And this bed is right in front of my front porch. And I have some mini roses, and in the middle my Just Joey rose, which I love, is one of my favorites. Kind of a peachy pink color that smells wonderful. Down in the bottom I have some mint, and I've been trying to pull that out for years and it comes back. But I'm also going to remove that and use it like I'm going to use the oregano. So let me show you that. So the last few years we have had some heavy rains that started erosion on that slope right there, and we never had it happen like that before. But it started last year when we had those just horrible rains, and it continued this year. And you can see down there at the base where it's kind of built up, and that's all been washed down. And over there is the solar panels. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to take some of that oregano and mint and see if I can get them started after I pull weeds on that slope. Because of the way they've taken over everywhere else, I'm hoping that they'll do the same over there. And it'll be a dual purpose. I can use the herbs, but I can also maybe stop that erosion some. And up there I've got my fruit trees, except for that peach. And I have, on the two sides, those are apple, and there's several kinds, Honeycrisp, Fuji, Galas. And in the back is a cherry tree. And that one I just planted last year and it did well, so I'm hopeful for all of these. And then where that dead one is from a couple years ago, I'm going to pull that out. And I have another type of apple tree to plant there. So hopefully in the next few days Shane and I will get that one done. And this small garden is mostly flowers. I have irises blooming. I have nice big mound of lavender that survived, and I've got some rhubarb there in the middle, a couple of rose bushes, and in the back some Russian sage and some hollyhocks, and tons of weeds that I have to get out and pull. But it sure looks pretty when the flowers bloom, because you don't get a whole lot of that around here. Thank you for joining me for this garden update. I hope you enjoyed it. And it was a little bit long, but in the future they shouldn't be as long. There's just been a lot going on the last few days. But going forward it'll be just how things are growing and also how my harvest is doing. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I want to thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and share. And as always, we will talk again soon.